Hi there, my name is Steve Gearhart and this is the Unagi Observer. Thank you so much for stopping by and watching the video this week. So we're going to have kind of a two-parter video this week, and the first one is we're going to start with a sort of a beginning review of Vinland Saga. You know, I just started this anime, I have not completed it, and so I just kind of wanted to throw it out there and just kind of let you guys know where I am on it and how I feel about it, and it's I think it's something worthwhile, so we're going to talk about that first. The second thing we're going to talk about is of course the much hated and maligned cartoon known as Velma, and I'm not doing a review of Velma so much as I want to talk about the really poor job of reviewing and the hate wagon that everybody seemed to jump on, and my concerns that that's going to be a thing moving on in the future for how things are looked at, anime, science fiction, whatever it may be. It's a concern of mine because it's not a good premise. So, but why don't we go ahead and start, and let's talk about Vinland Saga. So Vinland Saga is one of those anime that I've actually been meaning to get around to for quite some time. It has a topic of interest to me. Being an amateur historian, actually I do have a degree in history, but not of Vikings. And things like this kind of are interesting to me, like fictional historical stories, kind of like this Vinland Saga. I find interest in, so I've been trying to get to it to see how they were wanting to talk about Vikings at the height of their power of their era. And I was kind of wondering if it was more along the lines of an actual historical fictional story, or if it was like a historical fantasy story. Fortunately, it's not a historical fantasy story. Not that there's anything wrong with historical fantasy. It's just that that's not what I was hoping for, and I'm glad that I got what I wanted thus far. So let's just talk a little bit, some notes here on the actual Vinland Saga behind the scenes, so to speak. So, of course, this is an anime that has been spawned from a manga. I had initially thought that when it came out to Netflix commissioned it as an anime. No, they actually came from manga, and it's been around for a while, and I did not know this. So it started back in 2005, and it's been going on since. Like, it's still going, as far as I can tell. Fortunately for us, Vinland Saga has been, according to the notes here, been licensed for English language publication by Kodansha USA. Makes sense. They do a lot of good work on that. So I may try to see if I can get a hold of this manga. There are 26 tankobons, or 26 volumes of this, because it's been going on for so long. I mean, this is like, 18 years at this point. And the cool thing is that the guy who made the manga, and again, I'm horrible with Japanese pronunciations, so please don't troll me on this. I apologize in advance. Makoto Yukimura apparently is a little bit like me, because he had an interest in this subject. He thought it was something radically different than what, of course, what he's grown up with, what he knows, and that in his part of the world. And this is something completely different, and it piqued his interest, to the point where he actually, I believe, went to, was it Sweden, I think it is, where they actually were able to raise an actual Viking ship and put it into a museum. So he was able to see the museum and go to it and see it, and that caused him to have this huge inspiration to want to draw a manga along those lines. And another big inspiration of that was, of course, Guts, right? We all know Guts from Berserk. He's always enjoyed that, so he just kind of wanted to go in that direction and make a fictional historical story. So Netflix came out with this in 2019 on their services. You can now find it on High Dive as well, which is where I'm actually watching it. No, High Dive is not a sponsor, but if they would like to be, I won't say no. Anyway, so Vinland Saga is kind of, like I said, I've been trying to get around to watching this, and I finally got the time to put the effort into it. And I'm about 4 episodes in, and so just let's talk about the actual real life history of it. It is set in the heyday of the Viking kingdoms and raids and colonies that they set up in England, actual England. At that time, England was divided up in, I believe, 4 kingdoms. And not some of them were friendly to the Vikings and hence gave them land to farm on, and others were not so friendly and wanted them off the island, so to speak. In this time period, this is the point of time for the Vikings where they actually have settlements on Iceland, they have settlements on Greenland, and they have made contact with temporary settlements in the New World, and they have made contact with Native Americans. As a matter of fact, one of the initial characters that you meet is telling the kids of the Iceland settlement, one of the Iceland settlements, stories of him meeting the Indians, and he's actually wearing an actual headpiece that is historically accurate to the tribes that he actually visited. So it's not just like some made up like headdress you see in the westerns. It's an actual thing, which I was very gratified to learn. So while no historical fictional story is perfect, this one is not perfect, but you have enough good flavor of it to get a good sense of the history of what's going on in the world at that time, and the equipment and attitudes and politics, generally speaking, seem to be online. If you are a historical buff and you want 100% accuracy, you're not going to get it, so dial it back and just enjoy the story, okay? It's an anime, it's telling a story. But there's enough history there to flesh it out, to give it a good, solid feel, Viking, Nordic feel to it. So the story starts off, actually the anime starts off like, wow. It's a battle on the sea, and this did happen when different Viking groups would fight each other on sea. They would actually get their boats close enough so that they can jump around and start slaying each other. So this one guy, Thor, however you want to pronounce it, he's called Thor the Troll, because he's just this monster of he's a big guy, and he's just the ultimate warrior, right? He's basically Guts from Berserk, and he's just slaying everyone. But he's got this weird look on his face, like he's just so not interested in what he's doing. And there's a point where he goes overboard with another warrior that he's trying to kill, and he kills the warrior underwater. And he seems to grasp the idea that there's an opportunity being given to him at that moment, and he seizes it. And what he does is he swims away from the battle, and he winds up on a tiny settlement on Iceland. And you come to learn that he's just done with this. Like, he's done with raiding, he's done with killing, he's done with fighting. Even though he's really, really good at it, he just wants no more. And so he finds his way to this island, and gets married and raises a family, a daughter and a 6-year-old son, Thorfinn. I think that's the kid's name, yes, Thorfinn, who becomes the protagonist of the Vinland Saga. And so the first 4 episodes is basically setting up how the saga starts. And there's an unfortunate event where a slave from another settlement winds up at their literal doorstep, and they bring him in. They see that he's a slave. He's got the collar and a little bit of a chain on there. And Thor is trying to revive him. Oh, by the way, Thor as in just the name Thor, not the god Thor. So this guy's a regular human being. There's no fantasy element to this. So Thor is trying to keep the guy alive. The guy's slave owner actually shows up. There's a tense, back and forth between the two groups of settlements. And in the end, Thor recognizes that this guy is about to die, and he doesn't want this guy to be given back, so he doubles down on the deal with the chieftain of the other settlement, and he gives away basically 8 sheep, which is a big deal. That's in terms of wealth, that's a lot of money. So the family's kind of upset about this because the guy dies within minutes after the deal is struck. But before the guy dies, the slave dies, he asks Thor, he goes, I see myself in this place where I see my my mother, my father, my sister, and they're all dead, but it's beautiful, and it's da-da-da-da-da-da. And this is how Thor knows that he's dying. And he says, well, you're in Vinland, and he's trying to comfort the guy. So you get the idea that Vinland is not so much a place, it is, but it is also a thought, a mentality, a belief of something better and good. And that's kind of Thor's driving thoughts. That's why he's at that settlement, why he's no longer a warrior, yada, yada, yada. Over in England, there's a Viking settlement that gets wiped out by one of the English kingdoms, and word gets back, and meaning the king of that area, one of the Viking kings, sends out his guys to raise an army to go back to England to, punish, right, the English. And they've known this entire time that he deserted. Thor thought he was able to trick everyone to thinking that he was dead. Everyone was just like, no, you're too good. We knew you were out there somewhere. We just had to find you. We figured out where you are. And so they recruit him, and unfortunately he doesn't really want to, but he has to. And not only does he have to, he has to make a Viking longboat, and then get the young men of the village on there to go off to war, and as their leader. And he is not happy about this. So meanwhile, while all this is happening, his son Thorfinn is a 6-year-old boy. He's very excitable. He wants to go out. He wants to have adventure. But he's not into war, right? That's not something that is on his radar necessarily. What he's looking at to do is he just wants to see the world. He wants to get off the island. Now, he knows that there might be trials and tribulations that go on there, like in his imagination. He's leading a group of his fellow friends. They're all boys on this longboat, and they fight off a dragon, right? And anyway, so he has no real interest in, hand-to-hand combat or, leading armies or anything like that. That's not in his viewpoint. As a matter of fact, when the kids play their little war games, he and a friend of his are usually the first to get killed because he's like his father. He simply doesn't care. This is not his focus. His focus is to get a boat and get a bunch of people and go out and find the world, right? That's what he wants to do. Because of these unfortunate events, he's starting to get excited about things, and he's starting to learn about the concept of war. And then there's an attitude when he learns about who his father is, because nobody on the island really knows that he is Thor the Troll. They know that he was a warrior at one time. They know that he fought at one time. There are people on the island who are like him who have fought before, and so they know about war. So they know this about him, but they don't realize that he's just like this incredible warrior that's on near like godlike abilities, right? So this comes to light, and his son suddenly does a 180 in his perspective. When they're playing the war games the next time, the kid is just like, I'm taking out everybody, and he just does it. He fights everyone and he beats everyone. And they're just like, oh, like father, like son. His father's not happy about this, obviously. Thorfinn finds the chest of his father's weapons and armor from that past time, which was 15 years ago. And his father tries to explain to him, this is not a good thing. And I'm having to do this because I have to. Because if I don't, then everyone dies. So I have to do this thing to make sure you guys don't die. His son, Thorfinn, doesn't understand it. They make the longboat. They go out to sea. Thor is just like, he's trying to figure out how he's going to work this out, how he's going to try to bring everybody home. And he turns around, and there's Thorfinn on the boat. He's a stowaway. And that's where I'm at in the story. So the story is not, like I said, fantasy. So if you're looking for fantasy, thus far, I don't think it is, because it just seems very, very realistic. I will say that, realistic in the sense of, this is how life goes. If you were a fan of Vikings on the History Channel, that show, remember that show, Ragnar Lothbrok? You will see definitely influences of that show in this anime, and not in a bad way. It's more of a homage at worst, to be honest. So if you liked that, if you liked Vikings from the History Channel, and you enjoyed those stories, I think you'll enjoy this anime. So thus far, this is where I'm at in the anime. So I hope that I'm kind of talking you into joining me on this journey to watching this anime. So I'm going to continue watching it, and I'll put a video up from time to time saying where I am in it and how I feel about it. Thus far, I am feeling pretty positive about it. I'm enjoying it, so I hope you will too. All right, let's go into part 2 of this video.
All the world holds dear is but a backdrop of constant motion. I stand before it, alone and unchanging.
So that's it for this week. Let me know what you think about Vinland Saga down below. Like I said, I've only watched the first 4 or so episodes, so if you got spoilers, keep them to yourself for the time being. But as I go along with the series, I'll let you guys know how I feel about it as I watch it. Looking forward to it. I hope you do, if you haven't seen it yet, that you'll have the same feelings as I do. Speaking of reviews, next week, we're going to do a kaiju review. Yes, a kaiju movie review, just like I said I would, because these are fun movies to watch. This one I watched many, many years ago, and I'm kind of revisiting it. It is a South Korean kaiju movie called Yongari. And so I'm gonna give it a watch and give you a review, and we'll go from there. Yeah, so that'll be next week. Yongari, a review of Yongari, and yeah, so do what you need to do to stay healthy. Be good out there. I love you guys, and I will see you next time.